Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm your host, Mnemonic Tutor, and today we're going to cover the new Google Stadia announcement that just happened at GDC 2019. GDC is the Game Developers Conference. For those who are unaware, it's a big conference in San Francisco every year that has to do with development of video games. There was a lot of information given in the hour-long presentation about Stadia, which should have been about 3 to 5 hours to actually delve into all the details that people wanted. That being said, I'm going to break this into a 3-part series. This video right here is part 1, where I'll cover what Google Stadia is, how it works at a very high level, and what my thoughts are on cloud gaming and the future of gaming in general. Part 2 will go into the technical details that Google gave from an engineering perspective and the nuts and bolts that make this service run. It's basically going to be a deep dive into the underpinnings and the engineering of all this so that you guys actually understand how it runs. As a developer myself, Part 3 will cover what Stadia means to developers and why they will or will not develop on this new platform. I'm going to sign up as a Stadia dev to get a little bit more detailed data in that area, and I'll share that as well in Part 3. So don't forget to like this video, leave some comments, and subscribe to the channel to see all of my content. So let's go ahead and jump right in with what Stadia is, a high-level explanation of how it works, and what my thoughts are on cloud gaming and the future of gaming in general. So what is Stadia? Well, Google just announced a new gaming service they are calling Stadia. The intro trailer to the announcement showed a bunch of different stadiums, auditoriums, amphitheaters, coliseums, just places where humans have gathered for thousands of years to partake in communal entertainment. This is where the Stadia name comes from. I'm assuming it's because the Latin pluralization of stadium is stadia, so I'm guessing that's where it came from. So what is it exactly? Well, it's a game streaming service similar to NVIDIA's GeForce Now, Sony's PlayStation Now, and also the now defunct OnLive as well as Gaikai, which Sony acquired to create PlayStation Now. So what I mean by a game streaming service is that you don't have the game installed locally on your PC or your gaming console. Instead, the game is running entirely inside the cloud or inside a data center somewhere, and it's being streamed down to the device you're playing it on, which could be a TV, a phone, a tablet, a laptop, whatever. So how does it work? Again, we're going to have, this is a very high level discussion about how it works. And then in part 2 of this series, we're going to do a really deep dive into the technology underneath it and the engineering that actually makes it work. But let's start off by establishing a baseline of what a streaming service is. We're going to use Netflix as an example because that's probably the most popular streaming service that everyone is familiar with. Netflix has a catalog of videos, TV shows, movies, etc., which it sends to a device that you're watching it on. This is the basic definition of streaming. It's a service sending a video feed, well, video and audio, from a data center, or what we like to call the cloud in the technology world, down to a device that you're watching on. Again, it could be a smart TV, it could be a phone, it could be a tablet, pretty much anything. Without getting too technical, Netflix is the origin or source of that stream, and the device that you're watching on is called the endpoint. Note that in most cases, the source is inside of a data center or inside of the cloud. Cloud is also synonymous with the internet. It's somewhere else that is not your location, and you are the endpoint where that stream is coming to. So Netflix requires that an app of some sort be running on that endpoint device, whether it be the Netflix app on iPhone or Android, the Netflix app on Roku or another smart TV, a Chromecast, an Xbox or PlayStation, etc. There's always a Netflix app running where you, the user, are getting the video coming to, right? And then it streams it directly to that app. Most streaming over the internet is unidirectional or one direction from the data center to you, from Netflix's data center straight to you in the endpoint. Netflix to your phone, Netflix to your smart TV, etc. It's one direction. Cloud gaming, however, requires bidirectional or two-way communication. So communication has to happen in both directions. The cloud to you and you to the cloud, right? So not only does the game streaming service need to send you a video feed, video and audio feed, like you would get to your TV or monitor from your PC or gaming console, it also needs to send your controller inputs upstream to the data center, right? So the best way to imagine this is imagine that your PC or your Xbox or your PlayStation 4 Pro is sitting in a data center in some other city. And your controller is still able to connect to it over the internet, and it has a really long cable that's connecting back to your TV, right? That's kind of how it logically is set up. Although obviously from a technological perspective, it's a little bit different. So again, this introduces some pretty big challenges, right? The biggest challenge to game streaming in general is latency. So what is latency? Well, Latency is the time it takes for a data packet to make round trip from the endpoint to the data center and back. So for example, when you are sending information to the internet to receive it back, let's say you do a ping or you're selecting a movie to watch on Netflix, that selection has to go from your device, let's just say it's your iPhone, to Netflix, and then it comes back acknowledging that Netflix got the response, and then they're going to go ahead and stream your video. That has to happen very quickly in terms of cloud gaming, right? Because we're not talking about I'm sending a signal to Netflix and I can buffer and let the video start. In this case, I'm sending inputs from my controller very quickly at sub-second, right, millisecond speeds, and the rendering, the video and audio that are coming back down need to be in sync with that. So the total latency back and forth has to be very, very, very low. And for us, we're kind of putting that at 10 milliseconds or under, which is very low latency. So we'll get into more technical depth in the second part of the series, like I said earlier, but let's assume for now that Google has solved the latency issue. So in summary, Stadia is just a service that allows you to play games through a streaming service as if your PC or gaming console were in the data center. It takes the input from your controller upstream to the data center and then quickly renders the results and sends them back down to the device you're playing on. It does this round trip process many times per second so that it feels like you're gaming on a local PC or a console. So let me start this next section by stating that not only am I a gamer, I'm also a collector. I collect gaming consoles as well as physical games. I have every console from the Atari 2600 through the modern systems like PS4 Pro, Xbox One X, Nintendo Switch, as well as a gaming PC. I have thousands of games, cartridges, and discs from all of those consoles. So I'm not coming at this from a perspective of someone who only plays mobile games on their phone or PC-only games from Steam that I downloaded. I literally play on every platform that has been made in the last 30 plus years. That being said, I'm also a technologist. For those of you who know me, you know that I'm an engineer in Silicon Valley. So I build a lot of this stuff, right? As a matter of fact, the last few years, I've been building a lot of the virtual networking technology that will define the future of data center and cloud networking. So I have a really good understanding of how all this technology works and how Google is actually delivering this service. So I started out on PC gaming because console gaming was pretty weak in the early years. Then I hopped over to console gaming for a long time before finally building a gaming PC again a few years ago. I rarely play games on my phone. Actually, I almost never do. It's usually when I'm like waiting in a line and I have nothing else other than my phone, I might play like Monopoly or something on it. To me, my phone is a productivity device. It's not a gaming device. And I know that's not the case for many people, but I don't really game on the phone. That's what I'm trying to get at. Being primarily a console gamer and a collector for such a long time, it sort of warped my vision in terms of owning media. For a long time, I felt that if you didn't physically own a disc or the cartridge, you didn't actually own the game. I mean, you've seen stories about games being sold digitally on a console or PC only to be removed several years later due to licensing issues or something along those lines. I avoided digital games like the plague unless it was the only way to get those games, right? This is historically how I've played. However, fast forward to the latest generation of consoles and the last few gaming PCs I've owned. One thing I began to notice is that even when I bought a new game on disc, especially if it was a AAA game, it often required a patch or update on day one to play it. The size of these updates and downloads often exceeded the size of the game on the disc. So what's the point of having the disc then if you can't play the game as it was written to the disc anyway? When a game is no longer supported and you're not able to download updates and patches for it, what good is the disc? You really can't play the game anymore. When I built my first gaming PC in years, a while back, I had already been familiar with Steam and bought a few games here and there for my Mac. So I installed Steam and started getting games for my PC. Once again, it's all digital with no physical media. The same thing applies. What happens if Valve goes out of business or a game studio decides to take a game off Steam due to a licensing dispute? Does it matter? So, have I stopped collecting physical games? No. Have I stopped collecting consoles? No. Do I think that cloud gaming is a bad thing? Well, it's about as bad as digital games on Steam. Really, no better, no worse, right? The big difference, again, is this is streaming from a data center in the cloud as opposed to it being installed locally on your PC. So what are my thoughts on cloud gaming or game streaming? Well, I'm not going to lie. This is something I've been waiting years for. Ever since OnLive and Gaikai came on scene to try to tackle this problem, meaning streaming games over the internet, I was excited to see what they would deliver. They didn't get far though, primarily because the technology wasn't available yet to make it work properly. Fast forward to today and the GDC announcement for Stadia, and it looks like Google has now solved the problems of game streaming. I did participate in their Project Stream beta, and I was blown away by the performance of Assassin's Creed on there, whichever was Odyssey, I forget which one it was. It was amazing, and it was being done on a Chrome browser. I even tested it on a Chromebook, and it, again, blew my mind. So while I was watching the announcement, I was a bit shocked initially. I didn't think the right mix of technologies was in place to make this thing work yet the way it should. As you'll see in part 2 of this series, Google has a unique advantage in solving some of these problems due to technology they rolled out over a decade ago to handle the massive amount of data YouTube has to push into and out of the cloud. We also know that Microsoft is working on a similar technology that they're calling Project xCloud for now. I'm sure that name is going to change at some point, but just like Google went from Project Stream to Stadia, I'm sure Microsoft's Project xCloud is going to be called something else. Sony has PlayStation Now, which is nowhere near the capability of what Google and Microsoft have. Nintendo's also dabbling in game streaming in Japan only. Nvidia has GeForce Now, and there are some other innovative startups that are also doing game streaming now. So what I'm getting at here is that every major gaming company, startups included, now including Google, right, because of this announcement, is getting into the game streaming or cloud gaming scene. Not every company is going to be successful, but they're all aiming to take this new market, right? But why? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's because this is the future of gaming. And that kind of is the crux of what this video is about. Game streaming is the future of gaming, whether I like it or not, whether you like it or not. It's where gaming is going. Every industry from banking to farming has undergone massive disruption and evolution when exposed to the power of computing in the cloud. Even gaming itself has evolved since the original Xbox landed with an internal hard drive and an Ethernet port to connect it to the internet. Several things happened in this evolutionary process to get us to where we are today. First, we needed to get our gaming systems connected to the internet and using internal storage. Console and gaming PCs both did this well over a decade ago. Second, we needed our home internet connections from the various internet service providers, or ISPs, to roll out high bandwidth, low latency networks. This is something they've been doing for a long time now, but in the last decade it's gotten better, and I would venture to say in the last 3 years they've really upped the ante in terms of high speed, low latency networking to the houses and getting the bandwidth up. It used to be that you could only get like a 10 meg max connection up and down. Now, like here where I'm at in Silicon Valley, I have a gigabit connection, super fast on fiber, right? With sub 10 millisecond latency all the time. So this has been delivered. Third, and this is the funniest part, we needed the average gamer or consumer to let go of the attachment to physical cartridges and discs and be okay with digital downloads. Okay, think about what that means. So Steam led the charge on this front with the PC. But Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo all followed in the same footsteps with their own online stores for digital games. The irony here is that the console manufacturers led gamers to a digital-only world, a world PC gamers were already okay with in order to make more profit on games. How? Because there's virtually no cost to distribute digital games as compared to physical ones, where they actually have to press all the discs, injection mold all the casings, print out artwork, and then box these things and ship them from China to wherever. It's a lot of money to actually distribute physical games, whereas digital ones cost nearly zero, okay, because it's digital. So let me clarify this point a little bit. The gaming console manufacturers, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, led their customers right into the hands of the game streaming market without knowing what they were doing. Well, at least Sony and Nintendo. Microsoft, I think, let's talk about that. Without seeing Microsoft's E3 presentation, I can't be 100% sure because, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm about 90% sure that they saw this next evolution of the gaming space coming a while back, and they purposely led their consumers toward it. I feel like Microsoft wanted to corner the game streaming market with their Project xCloud, but they miscalculated in terms of whether or not Google would enter the market and whether or not Google could deliver as fast as they did. I wish I could have seen the look on Phil Spencer's face when Google dropped this announcement at GDC, because I'm almost sure they're working on almost the same thing, but Google just happened to get the word out faster. So needless to say, Google is the first of the big companies. And when I say big companies, I mean like big tech companies to enter this market. And Microsoft's coming right behind them. They'll be entering soon. As a matter of fact, I'm almost certain now that at E3 this year, we're going to get a big announcement about Project xCloud. So here's the rub for the gaming industry. Few companies have the technology needed to successfully stream games at the scale needed, right? Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Netflix are probably the only companies that can successfully do this from a technology standpoint. And again, I will delve into details as to why that is in part 2 of this series, so make sure you subscribe so you know when that comes out. But again, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Netflix are probably the only companies that can successfully do this from a technology standpoint as well as from a financial one, right? Think about it. These guys have billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars just sitting in the bank. Nintendo and Sony don't have the money to compete in this area. The entire market capitalization or the value of Nintendo and Sony is a rounding error for Google, right? Google could buy them and just shut them down if they wanted to. That's how much money Google has. So again, Google has a massive advantage here, as does Microsoft. And if Amazon decided to get into the space or Netflix, they could probably also parlay some of that because they have a lot of money. So what does this mean for the future of gaming? Well, first, I believe that cloud gaming or game streaming, whatever you want to call it, I prefer to call it cloud gaming because it actually tells you what's happening. The gaming is going on in the cloud. And yes, they are streaming it to you. That's very different, though, from traditional streaming of video and also gaming locally. So again, I think it's the future of gaming, and I'm pretty sure it's here to stay at this point, especially if Google has put this much money into it. Will it kill off the consoles? Man, this is a hard one. It's hard to say, and I love console gaming. Don't get me wrong, I do PC gaming too, but I really, really love console gaming. So will it kill them off? I don't know. The console manufacturers will definitely lose a lot of consumers over the next few years. I can tell you that much. There will be a ton of people defecting off of consoles to cloud gaming simply because they don't need to buy the console anymore. Now they can just sign up for a service and stream the game straight to their TV, their smart TV or their phone or their tablet or their laptop, whatever, and they don't need to pay $300, $400, $500 for the next ultra awesome console. Nintendo is the most likely to survive out of the group simply because most of their value is in the first-party Nintendo titles like Mario Brothers and Zelda, not so much the hardware, which also happens to be great. The Switch is an amazing console, but really what drives the sales for Nintendo is all of the first-party intellectual property, the first-party games. Sony has a lot of those too, but not nearly what Nintendo does. Microsoft is fine with cannibalizing their entire Xbox console business so long as all those gamers go to Project xCloud. What I mean by that is, Apple has a saying internally that they don't mind cannibalizing or eating their own business if it's themselves doing it. What they don't want is a competitor like Microsoft or Google eating their business. So in this case, Microsoft is one big business, right? Xbox is a piece of that. Project xCloud is a piece of that. They don't mind if all of their Xbox customers go into Project xCloud and never buy another Xbox console. That doesn't matter to them because they've got the same user base now in another service that they own and then some, right? They might double or triple the amount of people using it. So they're fine with that. So, and also there's Game Pass, right? And I realize that right now Game Pass is a download-based service, but because it's primarily older games and only a few newer ones, there's no reason all of those can't be streamed. As a matter of fact, I'm almost willing to place a bet that at the E3 announcement, when we get the Project xCloud announcement, there's going to be an announcement saying that all Game Pass games are available on Project xCloud and streamable directly to whatever device the Xbox app happens to run on. And that's another point we'll get into in part 2 is the Xbox app and what that's going to mean going forward. Sony's probably the most likely to fail here, but they'll likely get the PS5 out and maybe a PS6. I doubt they're going to have a PS7. And again, I own Sony consoles. I love Sony consoles. I don't hate Sony. It's just that the market is now shifting away from what they're doing, and they don't have the money or the technological expertise to actually pivot. Now, they could obviously hire someone or partner with someone, say Amazon or Netflix, one of these groups that doesn't have a game streaming service yet, and then become a formidable competitor in this space. But as it stands right now, the purchase they had from Gaikai, it sucks, and I don't see them being successful in this market. And again, when all these gamers start going towards this cloud gaming context, that's going to leave Sony in a really bad spot. I think next generation is their last generation. So, Google will be the interesting one to follow here as they're essentially a newcomer to the gaming market. They have the largest amount of cash and the best data center technology of everyone I listed. So, that gives them a huge advantage. I think gaming is going to change pretty significantly in the next 3 to 5 years. I see gaming consoles sticking around but becoming a more niche product, aimed at those like me who love to collect physical games. Personally, I can see myself switching to cloud gaming or game streaming as my primary form of gaming once Stadia and Project xCloud launch. I will still buy consoles and physical game media for those consoles for game franchises that I love, like Final Fantasy, but it will be at a very reduced rate as compared to today. Thanks to PC gaming, online stores for consoles, and massive day one updates and patches for AAA games, I've been deprogrammed to think that I need physical media for games. I'm almost to the point where I want to go 100% digital, but I'm not quite there yet. I can see that changing in the next 3 years, though. As with any product, I'm going to reserve final judgment until the service actually launches and I can get my hands on it. When that happens, I will definitely review it for all of you, pros, cons, and everything. That being said, I'm pretty sure that we've hit a new inflection point in the gaming industry, and gaming as we know it will be very different in the future than what we know it as today. I believe that game streaming is the future of gaming, and it is here to stay. So, what do you think about Project Stadia? Did you watch the GDC announcements? What questions do you have about the technology or developer perspective that you would like me to cover in the next 2 parts of this series? Leave all your questions and thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching this video. I'm looking forward to working on parts 2 and 3 for you. And, as always, I'll catch you all in the next video.